if you're taking your dogs to the beach, you want to make sure that you're introducing them to the ocean in a way that's not going to frighten them. Some dogs love the water and will run right up and be so incredibly excited, and others will not ever want to be near the water. And so, reading your dog as signals and paying attention to what they're telling you is going to be incredibly important if you want to gain their trust around the water. Now, I've had many dogs in my lifetime, and up until recently, my dogs have all been in love with the water. I would have to go in and drag them out of the lakes and the ponds and the pools and the ocean because they loved playing in the water. My current two puppies, one of them has just learned to love the water, and one of them is learning to like the water, while my little dog has never liked the water and will never like the water. So this is what we did, and this is what you can do when you're introducing your dogs to the beach for the first time. Now keep in mind, this is a process. Just because you've taken your dog to the beach and you're introducing them slowly does not mean they're going to learn to love the water on the first trip. Lucy actually learned to love the water on her second trip to the beach a few months after our first trip. Whereas the rest of my English Springer Spaniels fell in love with the water immediately. So just know sometimes it takes time. What I want you to start off by doing is introducing them in stages, in steps. You know, when you go to the beach, you are out on the boardwalk or out on the road and you're walking yourself in. So what happens as you walk yourself in? You are going out onto the sand. There's usually quite a bit of sand until you start to get to the water. Sometimes you're even walking in where it's just a lot of sand and you don't even see the ocean for a little bit. Take your dog in stages. We're going just like the stages of walking out to the ocean. We just have to slow it down a little bit for your dogs. So the first thing you're going to do is take them out on the sand. When you get to the sand, they're going to want to explore. Just let them explore. If you have a hands-free leash and can manage a hands-free leash, this is a good opportunity to allow them to be clipped around your waist and they can just kind of walk around on their own. They can sniff around. They can see what they like, what they don't like. They're in charge. And this is the important key takeaway from this entire video. They are in charge. You are just going with what they're comfortable with. Now, you're still dictating what you're doing during this time, but they're dictating how close you get to the water, if that makes sense. You want to be aware of how close they're getting. Because we're doing this in stages, we're going to let them see the sand. We don't even want to point out the water to them yet. They'll probably hear it. They may see some people down there, but they're going to look at their immediate surroundings first. So allow them to play with the sand. I actually prefer walking on the sand. You're going to walk so that you are not even going toward the water. I want you to just walk down one way, walk down the next way. They're aware of the environment. They're learning about it. They're seeing the seagulls. They're hearing the waves crashing. They're seeing the people, but they're not going near any of those things. I just get down on the sand, let them explore a little bit, and then I walk where they can see the water, they can see the ocean, they can see the people, but we're still very solidly on the sand and they are not anywhere near the water. This gives them a little bit of assurance. They're more comfortable walking up on the sand away from the water. Now, once you've done that for a few minutes where they've explored the sand, they've walked on the sand, they understand what the sand is, now you can start to move closer to it. And we're going to do this in sections. So if you are right up where the beach meets the boardwalk or the road, you're going to move in a little bit. We're going to get closer to the water. Maybe you're going to go halfway between it so that we're not close to the water. There's no risk of them being in the water, but they're now able to see more of it. They're now able to hear more of the ocean waves coming in and crashing. They can see it coming in and out. They can see the foam. They can see more of the seagulls that tend to be closer to the water. You're going to do it in stages, and they're probably going to be more comfortable with being up in the sand and being closer to it. But once we start to get real close to the water, now we're going to get a little more nervous. So a couple of minutes walking up and down the beach where they're not close to the water, but they can get a good view of it. Then you can start walking closer toward the water. As you're going, we're not necessarily stopping and then moving closer and then walking down that line. We're just going to kind of pull very slowly over the course of a couple of minutes. We're just going to migrate ourselves over toward the water. They will tell you when they start to get scared. When they notice the water, they're going to be curious. They're going to want to know what's going on. But they will let you know how they feel about it, especially as you get closer and closer to the waves. They're probably going to be a little bit nervous about the water coming in. My girls were. Most dogs are going to be until they discover what it is. So you are going to very easily and gently allow them to dictate how close you're going to get to the water. Now, this is the part where the leashes you're using come in. Now, we've had conversations, we've had videos on what leashes, what harnesses, all those things you should be taking to the beach. The longer your leash here, the better you're going to do. You want to be looking for areas that are not crowded, that don't have a lot of people around. And then you want to have them on a longer lead. I like to have that lead wrapped around me, but it depends on who you are as a person. If you can physically manage your dog kind of pulling on you without falling over, do that. If not, just make sure you get a really good grip on that so that nothing happens to your dog. And again, the longer leash you have, the better. I like having long leads as opposed to like a traditional leash for this one, but it depends on what your plans are here. It depends on who you are and what your dog is doing. If you need to control them, you just have to go much slower with this and not force them into the water. But I like to have them on a long leash. And then once they're ready, once they've understood what it is, they've seen it, they're kind of curious, and I've given them the freedom to decide if they want to walk up to the water or not. After a minute or two, as long as we're still comfortable and not scared, I will, with my long leashes, walk backwards into the water. I don't go very far. I go so that the waves go over my feet and my dogs can see I'm not afraid of the water. I like the water. I will allow them to watch me walk back up to my ankles, maybe a little bit higher, so that they can clearly see the water is not a threat to me. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm enjoying it. I maintain eye contact with my dogs. I'm talking to them. I'm narrating what's happening. I'm telling them what's going on, and they're watching me interact with the water. Now they have the choice and the freedom to come closer or to stay and watch me from where they are because they're on those longer leads. So I am able to back up into the water. I can play with it. I can kind of kick it around with my feet if I want. I can show them the foam. I can have a conversation with them. We're treating this like we're working with a toddler. And we're telling them it's okay, it's safe. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we're experiencing. You can come if you want, or you can stay and watch me from there. If your dog chooses to stay, you can play in the water a little bit. You can kind of move around and show it's not scary, it's okay, everything's fine, and then go up to your dog and reassure them, but do not pull them toward the water. If your dog decides to come to you, now you want to make sure you are standing your ground inside of that water. I know when the water comes in and out, sometimes it'll kick that sand out from under you. Try not to do too much moving. If you're sinking in the sand a little bit and you're trying to stay upright, try not to flail around. We don't want to do any sudden movements or anything that could even remotely look like there's a problem. So try to stand your ground as much as possible and let your dog come to you. You may have to pull your leash a little bit so that it's not dragging too much. That's fine, but we're never pulling on the leash. We're just maintaining it so that it's not going to trip anyone as we are doing things, and let your dog come to you. Do not kick water at them. The first couple of times, don't kick water at them. Don't make them interact with the water. Just let them see it. Sometimes they'll come right up to the waves and they'll play with it. A lot of times they'll play with the foam. They'll try to figure it out. And usually most dogs are going to be curious at first. They will go into the water to see what it is, and then they're going to make a choice whether they're scared or not. They're going to stay. They're going to back up. They're going to run. You need to go wherever your dog goes. If your dog panics and goes away from the water, move away from the water. Go comfort your dog. If your dog isn't sure, kind of stand your ground, see what's going on, but don't move. Any movement on your part with the water already moving can scare them more, so just stay still. If your dog is going to start playing, now you have a little bit of freedom to kind of move, but keep your feet in place, but play with them with the water. And then when you're sure they're okay with it, at least temporarily, now you can start to move. At that point, you can start to walk. I love the idea of just walking in the water, not going further into the water, just walking along the shore. So you are walking and the waves are coming in and out, and you're walking and you're getting a little wet as you go, and you are just walking down, just a normal walk with your dog. If they're good with that, now you can start taking them in the water a little bit more. Again, always at their comfort level. We're not pushing, we're not straining this, we're not forcing anything, because the second you force something is the second you develop their fear of something. So we have to be very, very careful, very cautious with this, and just little bits at a time. If you have a good experience, if your dog is doing well, I recommend you let it be a good experience. Don't force it forward. If it's a good first encounter, awesome. Start walking, get back up on the sand and away from the water. Do not allow for fear to sink in. If you stay in the water too long, something could happen. So I want you to do small increments, small bits of good encounters, and then get out of the water, get back up on the sand where it's not so scary, so that they have a good first memory, second memory, sixth memory. Then as they are getting more and more comfortable, you can do more and more things. You can go out deeper and see if they're going to start to walk out toward you. See if they're going to start to swim out with you. Do it in those steps and stages and let it take a couple days. It does not need to be a one-time figured out, make everything happen kind of moment. If your dogs are scared, of course, you are going to have to take extra time, extra steps. And if they're scared, they may always be scared. You may just have to be okay with them not being in the water. Each dog is going to be different, and it could take one trip, 6 trips? Never, for them to get comfortable with the water. It really just depends on your individual dog's personalities and what they are seeing. And if you have more than one person, that's going to be helpful too. If you are not doing this entirely by yourself, you can have somebody else holding their leash and standing with them up on the sand. That's going to reassure them and give them a little bit less anxiety while you go out in the water and call them and see if they want to come to you. Let them do what they need to do to feel comfortable with this, and then reinforce it by going back and creating more positive associations with that water in small increments that you gradually increase until they are just not at all fearful of the water. And of course, teach good water manners. We're not drinking the salt water. We're not going too far out. Make sure you have boundaries for them so they know where they can and cannot go, where it is safe and where it is not. And we've talked all about the leashes and harnesses and the things that you need to keep your dog safe at the beach. But if you've got questions, let's go ahead and drop it down below. I am here to get those questions answered for you and to help you along your travel journey with your dogs as well, to make sure that you are living out your best dog parent life and doing all the fun travel-y things with your pups as well. We'll see you in the upcoming episodes.